When people hear about World War II fortifications, they often think of giant concrete bunkers and endless trenches. But in reality, defensive lines were far more complex, carefully designed systems meant to delay, exhaust and channel the enemy. They weren't built to stop an invasion outright. Instead, they were meant to wear down attackers through layers of obstacles, firepower and terrain advantage. Understanding these systems not only gives us insight into how the war was fought, but also shows us principles that remain useful for strategy, survival and defense planning even today. The concept of a defensive line was built on depth and layers. Unlike a single wall or trench, defensive lines were usually made of multiple layers spread across miles of terrain. The idea was that no attacker should ever face just one obstacle. If they breached a trench, they would immediately face barbed wire, machine gun nests, minefields and another trench system behind it. For example, the German Siegfried Line stretched across western Germany with over 18,000 bunkers, dragon's teeth tank traps and interlocking fields of fire. The Soviets, on the other hand, built deep defensive belts during the Battle of Kursk, with up to 6 layers of trenches and gun positions stretching nearly 200 miles. This principle of depth meant defenders always had time to reorganize, counterattack or retreat to another line without collapsing completely. For survivalists today, the lesson is clear. Defense is not about one strong wall, but about multiple layers that slow down and exhaust anyone trying to push through. Natural features were always part of the design. Defensive lines were never placed randomly. Commanders looked for terrain that already gave them an edge. Rivers, forests, ridges and marshes were used as natural barriers to strengthen man-made defences. The Finnish defensive system during the Winter War against the Soviet Union is a perfect example. The Finns built their Mannerheim line on the Karelian Isthmus, using frozen lakes, forests and swamps to funnel Soviet troops into narrow kill zones where small Finnish forces could hold off vastly larger numbers. This principle applies outside of war as well. When setting up any kind of defensive position, whether for property, homestead or survival retreat, using the land itself saves effort and makes defences more effective. One key feature of World War II defensive lines was that obstacles like barbed wire dragon's teeth, trenches and minefields were not intended to be indestructible. Instead, they were meant to slow attackers long enough for defenders to focus firepower on them. The Maginot Line in France had retractable turrets, artillery casemates and anti-tank ditches that worked together with surrounding obstacles to delay the enemy. While Germany eventually bypassed it, the principle of combining obstacles with firepower remained sound. For modern readers, the lesson is that even simple obstacles, fences, ditches, hedges or barriers, are most effective when they are paired with observation and the ability to respond. A barrier by itself only buys time. It becomes powerful when combined with active defense. Although defensive lines look static, commanders in World War II understood that defense without mobility would eventually collapse. That is why most defensive lines included communication trenches, underground tunnels, and fallback positions that allowed troops to move and reposition. In the Soviet defences at Kursk, artillery and reserves were hidden behind the lines, ready to be moved quickly where the enemy hit hardest. This ability to reinforce weak points turned static trenches into dynamic systems. The takeaway here is that mobility is just as important as strength. It's like a survivalist who builds defences without planning escape routes, observation posts or backup positions risks being trapped by their own design. Quite a crucial point to consider, isn't it? Another overlooked element is the psychological impact of defensive lines. The sight of endless concrete bunkers, barbed wire and tank traps was designed to intimidate attackers before they even engaged. The Maginot Line, despite being bypassed, still served as a psychological deterrent for years. Defences didn't just block movement, They projected strength and stability. It's fascinating how much power perception can hold, don't you think? In modern terms, even visible signs of preparedness, like perimeter fencing, visible cameras, or reinforced doors, can, discourage intruders before a confrontation ever occurs. Looking back, defensive lines in World War II teach us that the most effective systems were not those that relied on brute strength alone. They worked best when they combined layers, natural terrain, obstacles, mobility and psychological presence. The lines that failed usually did so because they were just too rigid, too dependent on a single idea, or not supported by flexible forces. For anyone interested in survival, security, or even historical reenactment, these lessons still matter. Defense is about buying time, creating options, and using resources wisely. The soldiers and planners of World War II knew that every obstacle, no matter how small, played a role in exhausting and breaking the momentum of an attacker. If this breakdown of World War II defensive lines gave you a clearer picture of how strategy and design shaped the war, and how those same principles still matter today, make sure to subscribe to In the Beginning. Share this with fellow history enthusiasts or anyone interested in military strategy, survival or fortification. There is always more to uncover, and the lessons of the past can honestly prepare us for the challenges of the future.